Hi there, this is John Drew here from Elevated Planet, and I am here today with our good friend Ruah Bull. Hi there, Ruah, how are you doing?
Hi there. Great to be with you, John. I believe that that's the invitation to recognize the emptiness, the hunger, the fear, the grief, the loneliness that so much of what we've othered is experiencing. And I am making a choice. I will not participate in demonizing the other. I will not participate in separating.
Hmm.
And that's a choice I think we can make because the world of beauty is one that welcomes, right?
It is, and that is beautiful. I mean, that's when I kind of read that piece in totality from the story through to the poetry. I was just blown away because to me this just makes, absolute sense. Which do I feed? Embracing the shadow instead of rejecting, right? This is all part of the whole.
That's
And
right.
to be whole means that, everything has a shadow.
That's
And,
right.
and we've been in this cycle where we have been stuck in duality. And as the very good point made there about the social media keeping us triggered. You know, Interestingly, neither Jolie or I have really had much interest in social media, which is not great when you're trying to grow your community, right? So you got to get out there. But at the same time, intuitively, neither of us has been actively involved in it for the very reason you talk about. I think it's almost like we were told that this half of the year we could start to embrace the social media side of things a little bit more. But, absolutely, it's keeping us triggered. It's keeping our vibration low,
Yeah.
right?
But it's one reason, John, why it's so important to get things like Elevated Planet out there because it's like where's the good news?
Right.
Where's the joy? Where's the inspiration?
E-
So, when I turn on my television, I want to be watching Elevated Planet or Stephen Forrest or all of the wonderful people you're exposing us to because that I want to consume and that gives me a choice. So I don't have to go to CNN or one other brilliant person rehashing for the 5 millionth time what they think did or didn't happen. I
Right.
want to listen to Pam Gregory, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. The wonderful Pam. And this is the point, isn't it? Because it's encouraging people to quantumly entangle with emotions that are low frequency. And we are feeding, to your point, which do I feed? Whichever way you focus, if you focus on love, you focus on compassion, you focus on kindness, you focus on making America kind again, right? That is high frequency right there. That is
Right.
a powerful a force that you're feeding. But at the same time, we're constantly encouraged to actually focus on the lower things. We're constantly called to judgment. And I think the media does this an awful lot. It encourages
Mhm.
us to judge things that we don't even begin to understand, right?
I know people who have opinions about things that they know nothing about because the media encourages. It's like somebody asked, I mean, there were even some things I didn't vote on because I didn't know enough to like vote one way or the other. It's like I need to, I don't have children. I'm not going to make decisions about certain things around school because parents or teachers need to do that.
Yeah.
And there's all the research about how literally the people who developed social media looked at the neuropsychology and actually saw what triggers the addictive parts in our brain, the hippocampus and the amygdala.
Yeah.
So, so when I say don't choose, I certainly don't mean, you know, watch, Fox News or Elevated Planet. They're both the same. We need to make a choice about that. Do I choose low or high? But I can look at Fox News. I'll tell you a story about them. Here's one of my stories. I was watching something or other, and they did an outtake they were illustrating something. This is back when my country had children in cages, and so it was a show about it, and they had a little outtake from this three people in the morning, I guess, on Fox News who talk. And there was a man. One of the men said, "Well, it's too bad, but they're not our children." And I remember this feeling of such compassion. And I thought, okay, this is a God thing. This isn't a Ruah, what is wrong with this person? He's awful. It was like, oh my gosh, this man lives in a world where these little babies are not a part of him. I don't have physical children. Every child on the planet these are all my children. So there was even a moment of watching Fox News where my heart was, oh my God, these poor people.
Mm.
What do they live in? And so I just sent them a little blessing and then changed the channel.
Yes,
But
yes. And but this is it's a very important point because what we're heading to now in this age of Aquarius is about unity consciousness, heart-based unity consciousness. And that means the recognition that we all come from the same source. We effectively are all one, right? So everybody has the same value, and it doesn't matter what race you are, what your sexual orientation is, what your age is. We are all part of the same source, and that's what we've come to recognize. And this is when the community thing comes together, because I think this is what Elevated Planet really prides itself on, is building our community. We've got, particularly we've got Elevated Planet as a community, but Nos Populi, which is we the people, which is where I believe the future is.
yes, yes,
And
yeah.
and I think that the recognition within that, there is no hierarchy, right?
Yes,
All here on this planet for a reason. We
yes,
each are unique. We each bring something. And it doesn't matter how humble that is or how elevated that might be in the public eye, it makes no difference. It carries the same value and everybody respects each other equally. That is where we're heading. We're
that's
some
right.
way, we're some way off that at the moment. And you know what? Again, the election has triggered a lot of people. But
Yeah,
the fact is that sometimes you have to be confronted by the energy that is leaving, that to show you why it has to leave. Now, I think that, and again, it tells you why everybody is deserving of love. And, like whether because President Trump or President-elect Trump is a divisive character. People love him, people hate him, right? And there's not much in the middle. But the fact is that he is here as another aspect of the divine.
that's right.
He's here to create, maybe here to create chaos. Maybe he's here as a catalyst for change.
That's it. That's what I think. That I took a class with this wonderful monk who had a doctorate in spiritual direction and Jungian psychology. So I immediately was completely jealous. And he talked about how Trump is like the perfect embodiment of the shadow of American culture. We are, we've gotten sick with materialism. We've gotten sick with narcissism. Uh, it's almost as if some of the good qualities of our culture, individualism or whatever, have become so extreme that they've really become toxic.
Mm,
So you look at this man who is so empty. I was a therapist back in the 80s, and you rarely work with narcissists because they don't come into therapy because there's nothing
right.
wrong with them. It's everybody else. But I remember something happened in that his first term, and he had a bad experience, or I don't know. He was rejected for something, and there was this thing that they showed over and over and over again, where he came off a plane and he had his jacket off and his tie was undone, and he was walking towards the White House, and you could see the emptiness.
Mm,
You could see how lost he was, and that he has to do this puff up with all the best and the gold and the gild and this and whatever. And and when I look at him, and then I went out with some friends the other night, and we ended up staying in this hotel that had a casino, and we had to walk through the casino to get to the restaurant. Thank heavens it was no smoking, or I wouldn't have been able to do it. But John, I walked in, and there's this loud music and all these people at these gambling tables, and then they're sitting in front of these consoles with these huge bright colored things, and some of them, as I'm walking by them, they're like, Aladdin's lamp or some fighting thing, and a big long line of people in front of the ATM. And I was in like a spiritual crisis. I'm going, my God, this is American culture. This like
Mm,
hyper crazy loud money, money, money. It was like so sad. So I kind of feel like that's what sort of happened.
mm. Yeah,
This the loss of values, and you and Jolie have named it. Community has died in
yeah,
this country. And because of that, we've got this people are trying to fill themselves up with more and more crap
yes,
and more kind of fake self-esteem.
yes. I had a conversation earlier with somebody today, and this is the point, right? Our intention is to put the unity back into community, right? Unity
Beautiful.
consciousness, and
Yeah.
that's our aim. I had a conversation with a gentleman earlier. In fact, I'm meeting him next week. He lives in Austria at the moment, but he was hugely successful at setting up businesses, massive amounts of wealth. Still has, right? He's not that's all gone away, but he's closed down all his businesses. Well, he's sold them, and he's. But the fact is that what he discovered is that the more that he got, the emptier he felt. The more money he had, the less secure that he felt because he had more to protect now. He had more to lose.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
So now he
Yeah.
runs retreats, right?
Wow.
He's out there. He's doing something now where he's giving back because he understands he's understood consciousness a lot more
Yes.
than the materialistic vision that we get fed. And this is, what he did was following the dream, the westernized kind of version of it, and was very successful at it from the point of view of how we're conditioned and programmed. But it left him feeling empty.
Empty. That's yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it
It's
just shows how we can turn that around, but sometimes you have to go into the depths.
somebody asked Rockefeller one time, how much money is enough money? And he said, just a little more. And that's it. It's like if you're hungry, I don't care how many Twinkies you eat, your body might be stuffed full, but you can feel the lack of nutrients. And that's why a lot of people who are heavy eat too much because their systems aren't able to process, so they're
Mm,
actually not absorbing the nutrients from what they're eating. So they're still hungry. And there's a hunger for what's really nourishing and replenishing. And it is connection. It is community. I'm fascinated by the American Bill of Rights where it says the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say the experience of happiness.
right.
It's like we're
Yes.
always pursue. It's like it's just out there. Another $5,000, another car, another pair of shoes, another husband or wife, or whatever it is.
Mm,
Another body, another nose. Good heaven,
mm,
and and to actually be able to say. Remember, you were talking the other day about waking up with gratitude.
absolutely, yes.
That is the
Yes.
miracle.
Yes, it is. And I think this is such an important point because I've heard, in fact, Anita Moorjani's mentioned this. She's written a book which is Heaven on Earth Here Already, something along those lines, right?
Yeah,
And the fact is, it is. Heaven on Earth is already here. It's within, right? It's not. the car you're driving. It's not the house you live in. It's nothing. It's not the job you've got. It's actually a state of being,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
that to me is, it is that waking up with gratitude with a big stupid grin on my face, thinking about I've got so much to be happy about, and I do, you know? So I feel blessed. But the fact that I'm able to, and I've got to say that I'm fortunate. I've had a good life. I've got good people around me. I love what I have, but at the same time, I do take time to smell the roses,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
and appreciate what I have. I don't
Yes.
focus on what I don't have. I won't focus on what I do have.
Yes.
And that's, an important thing. I was one of the things you talked about there, which I think is very important. Again, I love the idea of, not suppressing, not doing the spiritual bypassing, going to the ocean and releasing those stones, kind of getting that energy, whether it's anger or fear, whatever it might be, but just, taking that stone and that represents, that goes out into the ocean. And it kind of reminded me of something we spoke about it. We've spoken about it a couple of times. We spoke about it when we did the show at the weekend, which is this idea that this came through Ann Tucker, who is this lady who channels the angels. But it came through them, and they're saying, okay, this is a way to avoid the spiritual bypassing is to allow the emotion to come through, whatever it might be, but allow it and encourage it in to a point where it builds and it builds. You give it 90 seconds and you feel it. And then at the end, you release that energy. You'll verbalize that. You'll just maybe pull it from you. But doing that is the opportunity. That's the stones into the ocean, right?
That's right. And yeah, it's wonderful. And Native people taught me about earthing any emotional thing that you do. So whether you create a ceremony or you do something, but get the body, get the earth involved. That's why I like, again, throwing the stones into the ocean,
Mm,
or again, like you said, you really feel it, and then do something maybe with a shout or your hands to let it go, um, so that you're physically engaged in it, because emotions are meant to be energy in motion, right? And there are certain emotions like grief. If somebody loses a partner, sometimes one of the things you see that's been harmful to folks is like, well, gosh, it's been 6 weeks, aren't you over that yet? No, it's like, there are certain kinds of emotional experiences that have a rhythm, have a process. You release some and then more comes up, but the point is, you don't set up camp there.
no.
You welcome it, you let it bring what it brings, and then like the ocean, it comes in and then it goes out, and it comes in and it goes out, and then you stay alive and awake emotionally as well as physically, intellectually, spiritually.
Yeah.
I mean, I love my joke about, because I Jesus is my guy, and I have a Jewish friend who says, he was such a Jew, and I said, what do you mean about that? And he said he laughed and he cried and he really liked wine and he ate and he had all these emotions, and I never thought about that. He wasn't just some kind of like meditative person. He was like this very lively teacher, and I get a kick out of that. It's like, all
Yes.
right, he got really pissed off and he turned over a bunch of tables, and then he went on.
Yes.
Don't go turning over tables, people. Internally, you might turn over a few tables.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And I'm interested as well. You'll have to expand at some point again, maybe on the aromatherapy thing as well. Maybe we can do a ramble on that one at some point and you can give us some guidance.
And what I'd love to do is there's a wonderful Jinshin Jitsu practice called handing it over, where you work with your fingers dealing with emotions. And what we could do is actually I could teach that, and then with the different oils, or also take people. I teach people a little exercise called listening to the oils and meeting with the divas. I'd love to do that,
Mm,
because I co-wrote a couple books with a friend, and she did a lot of the editing and stuff. But I would just close my eyes and go hang out with the divas, and they'd tell me what they were about. That'd be great fun, John. I'd love to do that with folks. Yeah,
brilliant. We're
yeah.
definitely going to do that. So you also mentioned about, with obviously the connection with the mother, right, with Earth, but also the father being important with that as well. And it just kind of reminded me when I did the Drunvalo Melchizedek Illuminating the Sacred Heart workshop, which is about getting yourself back into your heart-based
Right.
consciousness.
Mm.
And one of the meditations is around, accessing the Sacred Heart. And to do
Ah,
that, the first thing you do is you kind of offer, you go into your meditative state, but you offer your love to the mother, that your mother, because this is where your physical body came from, right? It is
yeah,
part of
yeah,
Mother Earth.
yeah.
And you wait for that connection to come back because the love comes back to you from the mother, and you'll feel that
Mm,
rush at some point.
mm,
And at
mm.
that point, you then reach out to the Father, Father Sky, however you want to feel that, right?
Ah,
And do the
nice.
same thing. So you connect to the heavens, you connect to the source,
Mm,
to the creator.
mhm,
And you, because effectively you are the child. There's the
mm,
father, the
mm,
mother,
mm.
the child, and that is what allows you to access the sacred heart as well, to get into to the to the to the sacred heart. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, what he has created is an amazing course,
Mm,
and
mm.
it's something that is, you know, he's researched this by going through pretty much 70 odd mystery schools around the world, working with the indigenous folks across all continents. And what comes through is such a deep level of wisdom. It's so far removed from our westernized conditioning and programming, but at some point, this is where we're moving to, right? This is,
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I'm only scratching the surface. I've been working at this for 6.5 years. And I am scratching the surface, but I'm really happy about that because I know I have so much to learn, and I know the journey never actually reaches a destination, right?
I mean, my assumption, if actually, I'll tell you the story. My mom came to visit me 3 years after she died, and she died alcoholic, um, and I don't even know how to say it in a way that's just tender enough. Kind of a lost soul.
Mm,
And she and I had a tough time together in this life. And someday I'll tell you the whole story, perhaps if people are interested. But John, when she came to visit me, who she was that divine spark that a couple times in our life together, we had an interaction where the veils of her illness parted.
mm,
And I actually saw who she really was, completely unimpacted by the injury, the wound that she carried. So I realized, oh my gosh, we die and we just continue growing and healing. And who knows where she is now? That was 10 years ago. Who knows what dimension
yes.
she's in? But yeah. And and there's something I wanted to say too, just when you were talking about no kind of status difference. I've been to a couple of Native American gatherings uh, where, and I can't remember now the name of it. It might even be something that Gene Houston helped to develop, um, where it was a gathering of people who would represent the different animal species
Okay.
and what they had to say about a particular topic. And so you'd have grizzly bear and you'd have squirrel. You'd have the eagle and you'd have the ant.
Yes.
And what I loved about it was the squirrel and the ant were just as important and just as significant and just as wise and just as necessary as the creatures that people sort of thought of as more glamorous or more wonderful.
Yes.
And I loved that because that's what you're talking about. It's
Yes.
like it's like we're not whole if we're not all here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very valid. And another thing I'd love to explore with you at some point as well, because of your shamanic journeying. You know,
Yeah.
right? So the power animals and the different
Yeah.
connections with the
Mhm.
different levels.
Yes.
It's something I wish I'd have journeyed or been able to journey, and maybe at some point I will. But it's something that fascinates me, and
Yeah.
But going back to that point about how, we are all, it all comes back to the universal, the law of divine oneness, right? So when we come here into this incarnation for this specific experience, and I remember this because, again, this is something that is very close to your heart, but quantum healing hypnosis technique, right? So Dolores Cannon, I followed her work a lot, and one of the things I recall, she had two sisters that, or am I getting confused here? It could be, okay, so this might be, no, this was more life path. Sorry, but yeah. So this was to do with life path planning. That was it.
Mm,
Life path
mm,
planning. So it was the
mm,
same kind of thing, but it was a specialist who goes to effectively into the planning room that
mm,
enables people to understand what the journey was. And what it was, there were these two sisters that had come in and they had a very troubled brother. So they were, it was from a wealthy family. And basically, the mother and father had passed on. They had divided the income amongst the three of them. The son had squandered it entirely because he was like a drug addict, an
mm,
alcoholic,
mhm,
and they tried to help him.
mhm,
They were compassionate and they tried, but he was on his journey
mhm,
and they wanted to understand. And it turned out that when they actually went back, they realized that actually the soul energy of the alcoholic, drug addicted brother was a master, right? He was there to teach them. He was there to teach them about kindness and compassion. And that was his life path. So he'd come in as someone who you would kind of like, walk across the street to avoid,
dismiss, sure.
right? But at the same time, his role was it was a selfless sacrifice to come into a very painful existence because his soul family that were sisters in this particular incarnation needed to learn about kindness, compassion, and unity.
Wow. Wow.
You can't take anything for granted, can you? And that's why there is no hierarchy. Some of the most advanced masters, I think, have taken a lot of the most difficult paths.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like you said, no judgment. It's like, I mean, for all I know, the soul that is Donald Trump might have made a choice to come in and live a very internally painful life in order to be this shadow figure to show to America, honey, this is where we've really gone off center.
Yeah,
And whether that's true or not, knowing that that could be true, then that brings a whole different perspective
yeah,
um, to to what I think and feel when I look at them. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
that's remarkable story, John. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's an excellent book. I've got it down there. It's the soul's gift. In
The
fact, let me
soul's
just
gift.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this because
Another book for my John Drew bookshelf, which is getting bigger and bigger, I have to tell you. The Soul's Gift. Let me see.
Robert Schwartz.
Robert Schwartz. Oh, that looks wonderful. Yeah.
It is fascinating because it tells you that
Mm,
we're here for very specific purposes, and things uncover themselves at the right time. But it tells you, I mean, some of it's actually quite difficult reading because people who've gone through horrendous things and yet they plan this for their life. It's a bit like when we look at what I believe the future for the planet is in the next few years, I do think we're going to go into chaos. And I
yes.
do think that the reason that Donald is doing the job that he's doing is because he is a catalyst for chaos.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But that
Yes.
is his role, right? And
Yeah.
he's part of the same divine creator that we all are, right? So however we look at that, but that is going to show us what needs to be released, we're going to be faced with circumstances that will be getting very difficult. This is when we understand that unity and community is very important because we're going to need to come together.
That's right.
If
That's right.
financial system collapses, educational systems, health systems, we got to be there for each other. We got to provide locally. If our global logistics disappears and goes down,
That's right.
and this is not a fear thing. This is a massive opportunity for us to really get back to understanding what life is all about, really.
And that's again what the Hopi prophecy is about, what so many of the prophecies are about, that I went through in California the big earthquake in whenever it was,
Oh,
87, 80. In fact, I lived in Boulder Creek, which is where the center of the earthquake
oh
was.
yeah.
My two brothers were watching the World Series, which is in San Francisco, and all of a
Mm,
sudden it went off, and then there's this earthquake in Boulder Creek, and I couldn't call them for 3 days. Um, and then in 2017, when I was living in Santa Rosa, or Petaluma, but I worked in Santa Rosa, California, we had this massive fire, and I taught at this retreat center until 5:30 on a Friday night, and 3 a.m. Sunday morning, the entire thing was gone, ashes.
wow.
And what happened in both of these circumstances was people pulled together. It was amazing the way people were helping each other, neighbors who'd never even spoke. And in fact, a lot of people said, why does it take a crisis to get us to do this? Which
Yeah.
is like, exactly. So apparently, we're all in our separate little places, but I do think stuff is going to happen. And I agree with you that we're going to need to go through this crisis. And the one thing that I want to be remembering, and maybe you and I will be talking about this, is in terms of that Aquarian shadow, there's going to be enormous suffering. And people, I mean, there are going to be a lot of people dying. It might be my
Yes.
turn to leave. I remember I was talking to my guides one time, and they said, you're going to die when you're needed on the other side. So it's like, okay, just, when I need
Yes.
to go, I'll go. Um, I don't want that Aquarius part of me that goes, yep, this is Hopi prophecy. This is what we need to go through, to shut down my heart. And yet I also know I can't be flooded by grief. So to just sit with, well, here's another story.
Mm,
um, Back in the 80s, I was at the dentist's office in Santa Cruz. And at the time, I was a priestess in a pagan circle.
right.
And that was my spirituality for a long time before I found the Native American, which was a little bit better fit. But anyway, so I was a pagan priestess. And I'm sitting in the dentist's office and I'm looking through Time magazine, and I turn this page and I see this picture of this woman in Africa, skin and bones, holding a dead baby against her breast. And underneath, I just briefly read something about what the soldiers. And John, if I had not been sitting down, I would have dropped to the floor, because as an empath, as a Pisces,
Right.
the suffering of this woman, the baby, and the soldiers who had become people capable of doing that. Just think of the wound that had happened to them that they could do that. Just was, my entire body was just flooded by it.
Mm,
In my mind's eye, and this is not the only way, this just happened to be my way because of my background, I'm this pagan priestess, literally cell to cell flooded with this suffering. And in my mind's eye, Jesus shows up on the cross. And he looked straight into my eyes and he said, do not carry that. That is not yours to bear. Give it to me, because I hold it and I carry it and I'm processing it, and I will till the end of time. Now, again, somebody else might have Kuan Yin show up, or an angel, or a being of light. It makes no difference. There was a
Yeah.
message from the divine, and because of my background, that was the symbol that came in. But it was so clear that the spirit was saying, feel enough so that you can be touched. But if anything goes over that to the point where you would be flooded, that is not ours to carry. Turn that over to the divine because the divine holds that. That's like the Pieta. That divine mother can hold the broken body of the God on her lap. I can't. So
Yeah.
I think this will be an important thing as we talk about emotions. Feel the emotion. Don't do a spiritual bypass, but don't set up camp. We
Yes.
have to let it go because physiologically we're not capable of processing this. Does that make sense what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah, absolutely. Greg Braden does the gift of the blessing, which we spoke about, right?
You
That
sent that to me. I have forwarded that to people.
yeah, it's a beautiful prayer, but it kind of like gets to that thing where it's not just the victims, but it's also those that perpetrated the act, the atrocity, that you have to kind of go through this, and it's not condoning the act, far from it, but it's actually just allowing it to release from you.
That's
Because
right.
because you're right. I think this is and it is a really important point because again, coming back to Robert Schwartz's work here,
Mm,
okay? There are millions of people on this planet now whose sole contract is to die under the circumstances that are going to appear over these next 4 years. It's what they wanted, it's what they asked for. Because what, and here's the thing, I heard this recently actually, and I kind of like this, it makes sense. A lot of people have agreed to do this because what is then going to happen is that they are going to be reborn into the new earth.
mm, mm,
And how
mm,
beautiful is that? So
mm.
you going through the trauma, and your gift to humanity is that you are helping to awaken people because they will see this and they will feel the suffering and they will feel the compassion and the kindness coming back to them, which awakens people to the unity consciousness again. That is their gift to the world. But they're going to, die in acts. And I do believe, and again, this comes through quite clearly in a lot of work that I've seen and heard and all the rest, is that at that point where you are going to die, and again, we've spoken about this, we do the elevated planet guarantee that, at the point your point of death will be the most fantastic experience you ever have in your life or your money back, right? Nobody's ever claimed against it, so it's obviously right. Now, I say that, and I don't mean to be flippant because I honestly believe that to be true. It's the release from the physical body. It's like taking off a badly fitting shoe. All of a sudden, you're out there, you're released from the physical body, and you're going back to non-physical consciousness. It's a beautiful release. And, it's like, say, if you witness a car crash and you see a body in a car or something like that, that is an awful thing that you can get stuck on, but what you have to realize is that essence, that soul essence, is out of that before it's even felt a thing.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
the
mm,
suffering does not exist the way that it appears from the outside.
mm,
So,
mm,
and again, this is Robert's work is brilliant, and
mm,
it kind of explains this stuff in great depth.
mm.
Um, So yeah, but I do think it's a very important point, Ruah, to take forward because I like you, I believe that this is a time of change and we will see a lot of things that are going to be quite heart-rendering. So having the tools to be able to process it
That's
without
right.
getting dragged down
That's right.
is
That's right.
very important. And
Yeah.
and you know, I don't know how long I've got left on the planet, but I have a feeling it's a while yet, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about the journey. But fear of death doesn't exist for me, right?
Yeah.
It's something that when the time comes, I'm going to love that journey. But at the same time, I want to stay here. I love life too much to want to give up at this stage.
It's yeah. It's I feel the same way. It's like, okay, I'll go when it's my time, and I my expiration date, whatever that is. But in the meantime, I love as crazy and as much suffering as sometimes there is, I just love this place. I just love this earth, and it's such an incredible time to be alive.
Mm,
To to be participating in, however we do, in this amazing, transformation.
yes.
And like like I said to you, that wonderful woman Valerie Carr, she's a Sikh woman. She's a political activist, and she had this wonderful book called Revolutionary Love. And she said, "Is this the darkness of the tomb or the darkness of the womb?
Yes.
I choose the womb."
Yes.
And birth is pretty messy.
Yes.
I haven't gone through it myself, but from what I've seen and heard, it's pretty messy and it can be
Mm,
rough. And it's all in service of the birth of new life.
it
So,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been through it either for that matter, but
In this lifetime, John.
not in this lifetime. I'm sure if you, there's probably a reason I was
There've
coming as a
been a
man
few.
this time.
I'm
One
gonna go
of the,
back and go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things I would love to cover with you at some stage as well would be the pagan priestess thing, because I read a lot about this kind of thing going back to the time of the Druids and things, the priestesses and the rituals and the ceremonies and how beautiful that was. And it's all about honoring the Earth Mother again, right?
Yeah. And that was part of it was a women's circle, and it was very much about the mother because as women, we were all trying to, reconnect with this energy that we've been separate from. But what I loved about the woman who ran it is that she had a very strong relationship with the Green Man. Um,
Mm,
so even though it was honoring, because I don't feel drawn to things that split stuff. It's like, I I joke that I did my fundamentalist phase in my 20s as a feminist. I just was a baby feminist. Everything female is good, everything male is bad. And then we had Margaret Thatcher, and I went, okay, let's see, I think I have to adjust this. And, and I knew what it was to be a feminist. And if you weren't just, oh, it's just, in my 20s, black and white thinking, all that stuff. But, part of what blew it up for me, so I was very self righteously feminist. Uh, I was in a meditation group, and one of the women in the group was Hindu. And she looked at me and she said, Ruah, you've been mostly men in your past lives. And it was like, and all of a sudden I couldn't see. It's like all of a sudden it was
yes,
like,
yes.
oh, so ever since then, I love the mother, but there's no way I'm going to dishonor the father
No.
because I believe that men have been as injured in patriarchy as women in different ways,
Hmm.
but still there's an injury in the same way that I would never say to a person of color, my suffering as a white person is similar. That would just be brutal to say that. It's not true. And there is a wound in being white if I've been somehow told that I'm superior, because that is a wound, because that is not the truth.
Hmm.
So I'm much more about the wholeness, right?
Yes. Yes. And, I'm excited again about the age of Aquarius because it does take us back to that divine feminine collaborative energy.
That's
And
right.
that doesn't mean that, that we go back to a matriarchy as opposed to, right, a patriarchy. What it says is that we each have a balance of masculine and feminine.
That's right. That's
But
right.
feminine energy is going to be the more dominant. But you do need a balance because if you're going to achieve anything, if you don't have the balance, you don't go forward. But nevertheless, to have that collaboration energy, to
Hmm.
to be
Hmm.
at the forefront,
Hmm.
that to me is power.
Yeah,
The old days of the egoic top-down structure, that's what we've had now for, the last 13,000 year cycle, very evident over the last few thousand years. So, this is what we're playing out. And what's interesting actually, because, we talk about, Pluto going from Capricorn into Aquarius.
Mhm.
That final degree, the anaretic degree, the 29th degree of the switch is when you see the shadow side at its highest, right?
And that's the American election. That's some of the horrible things happening with the flooding and everything. It's like, but that was to me, I haven't said this out loud. Um, so here I am saying it to you on tape. As much as I love Kamala, and I actually wrote her an email a few days before the election and just said, whether you win or lose, I'm going to ask you to please keep your energy focused on maintaining this coalition that you've been developing, because I don't care who the president is, the coalition that you began to cultivate, that's what we need to have here. And when I asked for an image of the election, what I saw was, if she was the president, what was needing to happen, there'd be a bit of a break on it, but it would still be happening.
Yes,
Maybe there'd be a little bit more kindness. We wouldn't like take
yes.
2 million or 20 million people and supposedly put them in, God help us, concentration camps. It's like, that is just like insanity. But it's still happening. And I just thought, well, maybe greater wisdom decided, instead of slowly going off a cliff, which lets us maybe ignore that it's happening, sometimes you need something blown up in your face,
This
and
is
here it
true.
is.
And that's, I do believe that to be the case, and I've heard this in recent times, is that the fact that Donald Trump is going to be the next president will greatly accelerate
That's the
us
word, accelerate. Okay. Yeah.
into the next era.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, I remember this was attributed to George W. Bush. Whether he ever said it or not, I don't know. But I think it was after one of the terrorist type of activities, but he was addressing the nation, or he was addressing people, and said, yesterday we stood on the edge of a giant chasm, but today we've taken a big step forward. He probably didn't say that, but
Gosh, I love that.
I wish he had have done.
And there isn't a parachute in sight. That is fabulous.
So yeah, there we are. We were on the edge of a chasm.
And here we go. Oh gosh, hon, this is a great conversation. Thank you for this.
Absolute pleasure is all mine. This is going to be one of many, many, and I love your energy. I love the wisdom that you have. I love the wisdom that you share. And honestly, I know that we have enough material within your wisdom bank to go on for many decades. So
It's,
we
it's,
both
it's,
need to hang around for a
we
while.
both need to I feel like I made a new friend. It's so much fun to talk to you, because it's like, it's just it's like my brain is just so it's like you say something and another story comes in, John, and another story comes in, and I feel like, again, all my guides have said, Ruah, this is not about you, this is about the stories.
Yeah.
And I just love, in our conversations, they just arise. So thank you. And again, if they and I guess the other thing I want to say too is, it's so mutual. It's like, yeah, I've been doing this for, I'm 73, so 50 years. um and the joy is, there's so much more to learn. I mean, I have like 6 books, after the messenger, that I'm slowly moving through, that you sent to me, that smells so good, talking about aromatherapy. Um, and it's like, it's never ending. There's just all this wonderful stuff that is so enlivening
Mm.
to keep learning. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh yeah, we should cover off the messenger at some point as well, the messenger, the Messiah, because one of the other things I've read, in just literally, in fact, I was reading it earlier this evening, was Drumbelow Melchizedek's book, which is the Flower of Life book, the first one, where he actually talks about something, in fact, that is very much one of the focus points of that book. You won't have got there yet, and so I'm not going to spoil it. But again, it is to do with the Sphinx. It's to do with the Great Pyramid. It's to do with the Hall of Records, and something that Edgar Casey actually
Mm,
spoke about going
Mm.
back obviously a few decades ago. Some of the stuff that came through there is absolutely in alignment between all these books, but it's a fascinating journey. So yeah, let's keep it going. And
Let's keep it going, my
thank you.
friend. Well, thank you so much, and bless you for staying up. I'm glad you had a nice bath. I think I might. I brought out my lavender. I think I'm going to go take a lavender bath myself. And let's plan something with aromatherapy, or that'd be a delight because the divas are really wanting to help us, John. It's
Mm,
like, and what was interesting is when I went in to meet with them, we went into this place in the forest, and the different ones would come in to have a conversation to share what their gifts were. But they all said, you can choose one or two or three of the oils, and because they're connected with everything, so people don't have to go out and buy 60 different oils.
mm,
Um, but it's like I just went in to see if I could. I don't remember what it was. I was probably sitting with lavender because she's sort of the one you always start with. And all of a sudden, I was in this clearing, and there were all these divas sitting around me, and they were just like so glad that somebody was coming in to say, "What are your teachings?" Because they're just primed to
mm.
help us. So that'd be just a delight and it'd be fun to maybe even do a little bit of a meditation.
Right.
Have people close their eyes, imagine they go into this beautiful clearing and they invite in one of the divas because there's no way to do it wrong. And then we could kind of talk about what that might be like. Anyway, you let me know. I will
Yeah.
do whatever you'd like me to.
We'll have
So
to
if
do
you're,
that aromatherapy session. We'll change that from rambles with Ruah to bathing with John and Ruah.
there you go.
We'll have to switch where the cameras are going to be, maybe.
Oh my God. Well, I have to tell you that when we were at this god awful casino place that my sister put us in this hotel. Like I said, I was like in a spiritual crisis. My sister was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm going, "Those people are crazy, and they're selling $40,000 watches, and there are people on the planet starving." And she's going, "You just ruin everything." I'm going, "I'm sorry, I can't help it." But that was a bathtub I could do. It was this huge bathtub, and I could sit down and stand up. I've got this little teeny bathtub. It's like, John, the way I'm built, I am like Grizzly Bear. It's like I get into my bathtub, and it's like I need a crane to get out because it's like I fill the entire thing. So we'll do forest bathing with John and Ruah. All right, my
Right.
friend, you
That's a
take
deal.
care. This
Yeah.
was delightful.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again, Ruah. And also for those who have tuned into this video, thank you very much for being
Yes, thank
part of
you.
our community and for joining us. And yeah, let's just keep this journey going and going.
Going, and I'd love to hear from people if there's anything we've said or talked about that they would like us to speculate or reflect on or talk about. Uh, I would love that to know because there are lots of things people are going to say, and I'm saying I know nothing about this. But if it is something, that'd be a delight to respond to people's interests.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And anybody, and for any questions that you've got, if you want to send them through me at johndrew@elevatedplanet.life, or you can contact us through elevatedplanet.life contact page. So on the website, elevatedplanet.life, there's a contact page. So any questions you've got for Ruah, any questions you've got for me, any questions you've got for Jolie, pop them on there and we'll just make sure that you get responded to. So absolutely. That's fantastic.
Great, wonderful. And a big hug to Jolie too, because I always feel like even when I'm talking to you, her, she's always present.
Yes.
So I always just love to just say, "Hi, Jolie. Thanks for being there."
Yes. 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 I love working with her.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Well,
right, dear.
thank you very much, Ruah. Enjoy your evening and
All right.
we'll speak again soon.
We'll
All
speak
right.
again soon. Sweet
Take care.
dreams.